of Abu Talib. And he invited all of them to his house, his monastery, and gave them a meal. And he asked, is the entire caravan present? They said, no, we have left one person, one child by the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said, call him as well. When he saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Abu Talib that this is going to be the future prophet. This is the prophet that God has sent to mankind. Be careful that the Romans and the other people don't harm him, because they will try to trap him, try to kill him. And he was asked, how do you know this? Buhayra responded, I saw the trees prostrating to him, I saw the cloud sheltering him, I saw certain signs that indicated to me that he was a prophet. So this is the story that is mentioned in some of the books of Sirah. However, many of the scholars, the more verifying scholars of Islam, the scholars of Hadith, the scholars of Sirah, they say that this story is not absolutely authentic. Two major incidents occurred while the Prophet ﷺ was still a young man. And these incidents are the wars of Fijar. They're called the Fijar Wars, and the Pact of Fudul. So there are two names here, Fijar and Fudul. The first of them is a series of wars. They're called the Wars of Fijar. What happened was that two of the tribes of the Arabs, one of them the Quraysh, and that is the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ, and another one, Hawazin, they began to fight an illegal war, a war that should not have been fought. And the Quraysh were in the right. So the Prophet ﷺ was still a young man. He was too young to physically fight. But he says, I remember my uncles fighting. And I remember that the Quraysh were fighting, and I would help them in this fight by picking up the arrows that the enemy had thrown and handing them to my uncles. Now you realize in those days, arrows can be used on both sides. If the arrow misses its mark, you can then use it back upon the enemy. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I remember, he's telling his memory to the Sahaba many years later, I remember as a boy, as a young man, which means he must have not even been 14 years old, because he did not participate in this war. He only helped them by giving them arrows and by helping in the back of the army. So he said that, I remember helping my uncles in this battle. And these are called the Fijar Wars. And this shows you the Prophet ﷺ played an active role in the society that he was living in. He did not stay away from the actions of society. When Mecca was under threat, when the Quraysh was attacked, he participated in the defense of Mecca. He participated with his uncles in fighting against the tribe that was attacking. That was the tribe of Hawazin. The second incident is more interesting. And this is called the Pact of Fudul. The Hilf al-Fudul, the Pact of Fudul. And this pact revolves around an incident that occurred in the early years of the Prophet ﷺ's life, when he was still a young man, where in the time of Hajj, a certain trader came to... Now this person of the Quraysh was a very noble, high-statured person, a very rich person. And he told him that I will pay you your money later on. So give me the goods and I will pay you your money in a few days. So the man gave him the goods. When the time came to give the money, he came to the Qurashi, the rich Quraysh person, and said, give me the money. The Quraysh person said, later on, still there's time. So he came again and again and again, and every time that person would refuse to give him the money and make an excuse. So this man went from house to house asking the people, who can help me get my money? But nobody helped him. Nobody helped him. At the end of Hajj, he came in front of the Kaaba and he gave a very long line of poetry, a long poem. And that was the main of that was their media. In those days, writing a poem was writing a newspaper. You're spreading the news. And he announced his poetry. He shouted his poetry out loud in front of the Kaaba. It's a very beautiful series of lines. We cannot say it in Arabic. But the main phrase in it is, O people of Quraysh, of what are you so proud of, that you claim to be inheritors of the Kaaba and protecting the Kaaba and living in the holy city, when you are dishonest and you don't even help the weak and help the oppressed against the evil person? Here I have come from a faraway place in Hajj, and I have sold my goods to so-and-so, and he has refused to give me money, and not a single person has helped amongst you. What is the point of all of this nobility? Of what good is your status? So he criticized them, and he rebuked them. And the news spread amongst the tribes that this is what the Quraysh has done to this poor man. At this, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Zubayr, the son of Abdul Muttalib, this would be one of the older uncles. He convened a gathering he called a meeting of all of the noblemen of Quraysh, all of the leaders of Quraysh. And he said, this is not good. It is not something that we are proud of. How could this have occurred in Mecca in front of our eyes? We need to make sure that this incident is never repeated. Firstly, they made sure that this rich merchant paid the man, the rich person of Quraysh paid the man back. And then they said, we will now all sign a treaty, gather together and sign a treaty that we will uphold the rights of the oppressed and return the goods and the items that are owed to those to whom it is owed. In other words, this treaty was meant to uphold justice and to make sure that no person got away with injustice. No person was tyrannical in his interactions with other people. And of the people who was invited to witness this pact was our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only the elite were invited. In other words, the leaders. Every member of one of the tribes was invited in order to vouch for the rest of the tribe. And one of the person, in fact, one of the youngest people to attend was our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they all testified in front of the Kaaba that they would always be just in their dealings, that they would always uphold honesty, that if anybody was owed any money, anybody was oppressed, then all of them would come together, regardless of what tribe did the oppressing, and they would demand from the oppressor that he gives back what is due to the weak and the oppressed. The Prophet ﷺ, many years later, he said, I witnessed the treaty of Fudul. I was there, I was present, and I am proud of it. I'm happy of it. And if I were called to uphold this treaty, even now, in Islam, meaning now that he's a Muslim, many years have gone by, meaning that the religion of Islam has started, he's a prophet of Allah, he says, even now, in Islam, if I were called, I will uphold this treaty. So this shows us the Prophet ﷺ was proud of this treaty. And he said, I still uphold it. And it was a treaty that was meant to serve justice to all parties concerned. Just because you're rich, just because you're famous, just because you have power, you're not going to get away with injustice. That was what the purpose of the treaty is. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I was proud to have been present there. Now this treaty really and truly shows us a very interesting and important point. And that is that the Prophet ﷺ, despite his young age, he was invited to attend this treaty, which means his status was quite significant. Hence, they had already appreciated and acknowledged the status of the Prophet ﷺ. Only the senior most people were invited. And yet the Prophet ﷺ, despite his young age, he is probably now still 18, 19 years old, 20 years old maximum. They have already invited him. And that shows that he had those qualities of leadership already at that age, that the other people witnessed this quality within him. We'll take a short break now and we'll come back and continue talking about the implications of the Treaty of Fudul. Stay with us.